Wednesday, September 12th. I'm Matt Sager, and this is the Matt Sager Podcast. Welcome. Been an eventful day for comic book movies and their fans. Particularly the DC movie universe, which is frankly a mess. It was before today's news, and honestly, the news of today may sound rather chaotic, but I actually think it's for the best. Apparently, I want to stress apparently, this is all kind of circumstantial. There are reports, but they've been sort of refuted by his manager, but apparently Henry Cavill will no longer be Superman. Cavill began playing Superman in The Man of Steel, a movie that divided fans pretty evenly down the middle. Some people liked it very much, others felt it was kind of untrue to the spirit of the character, which frankly has been so muddled both by movies and comics and all sorts of media that we were sort of struggling with what that definition was. But I didn't think that his version was my Superman, or any Superman. And I don't necessarily blame most or any of this on Cavill himself. The failures of Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Justice League all fall on Zack Snyder. The actors themselves, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, they were doing I know this is a horrible thing to say when you're accused of anything, but they were following orders. So that goes for Ben Affleck, too, who also was reportedly out as Batman. Apparently the whole thing was started because they were trying to get Cavill to appear as Superman, do a cameo in Shazam, the trailer for which debuted at San Diego Comic-Con a few weeks ago. I actually spoke about it at the time on this podcast. Looks very good. I'm quite excited for it, as are many DC fans who are looking for a bit of lighter fare after the Zack Snyder darkness we've been going through. And there was some contractual issue. He's tied in with various other franchises. He either had to or wanted to, again, allegedly, drop out of the role. And immediately thereafter came the reports that Ben Affleck was leaving too, and those rumors about Affleck have been in effect for months, if not over a year at this point. You know, The Batman, the next Batman movie that they've got slated for release from the DC universe, he was originally going to be writing, directing, producing, and starring, and one by one, writing, stopped doing that. He said, no, I'm going to be too busy. Same with producing and eventually with directing, and he has been very reticent about committing as to whether or not he'd even appear. So I was expecting an announcement at some point that he was going to drop out. Again, I think Snyder, I don't want to pile on the guy. I think people have been very cruel to Snyder. People take these comic properties very personally and attack with such ferocity that I think is really undeserved, although I did hate his movies very much, so I'm conflicted. Now, I did love The Watchmen. The Watchmen is actually a perfect demonstration of Snyder's strengths and weaknesses. The Watchmen are not superheroes. They were in fact conceived by Alan Moore as sort of an indictment of superheroes. They're more of an Ayn Rand objectivist nightmare, and therefore he was able to tap into that spirit. You know, he himself is kind of a weird dude, and he was able to get very much in touch with the Watchmen and their anti-hero message, if not necessarily the various layers that Alan Moore wrote into the original about how maybe that wasn't really the best way to be a hero. And you really saw that in the very first still of Man of Steel. This is an inhuman character, and yes, Superman is an alien, but look, if you've ever seen a single Christopher Reeve Superman movie, barring the one with Nuclear Man, you know that Superman is a human first and foremost. He never became one under Zack Snyder. And what will end up being, apparently, the last we see of him as Superman in the DC universe is this butchered version in Justice League where half of it is reshoots. And again, for contractual reasons, Cavill had a mustache during these reshoots. And with a budget of, I'm assuming, $9, they went frame by frame to remove his mustache digitally. And so from the very first frame of Justice League, you see this crazy looking Superman with like a hair lip and weird teeth and a jaw that doesn't match up with his cheekbones. It was bad. I do not disapprove of this decision, and I honestly think of the DC universe that it's almost a shame. I understand what happened. They saw Man of Steel as their late entry into a sort of ersatz Marvel universe. They were going to follow the same pattern, and while skipping several steps, you know, Marvel Studios had 5 solid hits under their belt before they did the Avengers. Their timeline was extremely well thought out, ambitious, and successful. Now, DC, on the other hand, I don't mean to be a fanboy here, taking either sides, but objectively speaking, DC's was the opposite of that. They came in very late and decided they were going to leapfrog several steps in order to, all right, get one Superman movie out, then a Superman with their new Batman, at some point along the way, figure out something to do with Wonder Woman, and get a Justice League movie out as soon as possible. The one thing that came out of that is unquestionably great is Wonder Woman. And it's a real shame that she appeared in Justice League. Because I think what really ought to happen, regardless of whether Cavill comes back, regardless of whether Affleck comes back, Snyder has been removed as creative director of the DC Extended Universe, is what they officially call their cinematic shared universe. I think we ought to forget Justice League ever happened, not just us personally because it was a trauma to watch, but on a corporate level, I think they should abandon that strategy. Still strive for a shared world, but look, they've tried once and failed. Maybe try again. But keep the good. I mean, there's movies already in production. Aquaman, another Wonder Woman movie. Those certainly should move forward, as should Shazam. But I don't know that the Batman shouldn't just be completely stripped down, rebuilt from the bottom up, because it involved the Zack Snyder verse, which is unsalvageable, to be honest with you. Justice League was so very bad. Such a disappointment, creatively and commercially. I'll grant you, they brought in Joss Whedon to do all these reshoots, and it's fair to say Whedon shares some of the blame. I'm inclined to think, had he been given the time he asked for, the budget he asked for, he might have been able to save it. But the bottom line is, it should serve as a final closing statement that we tried to build a cinematic universe, but honestly, we need to start fresh. And there's so much fresh talent out there that's just begging to work on these movies that DC could easily get, well within budget, excellent writers, directors, producers, and performers. And already rumors are swirling. First of all, Jon Hamm taking over for Affleck as Batman? Hell yes. Absolutely. 100%. Yes, yes, and yes. That is apparently being discussed. Hamm is very enthusiastic about it, but what's really happening behind closed doors with the executives making these decisions, who knows? And Superman, they're talking about Michael B. Jordan. He is an awesome actor. He totally made Black Panther. I mean, sure, so did Chadwick Boseman, as did the Dora Milaje. Everything about Black Panther was just ecstasy. But he was an incredible villain/hero. In Killmonger, you're supposed to be rooting against him, but every good villain has a motivation that's rooted in the idea that what they're doing is something good. And Jordan did that so well. Really, there were times where it was difficult to not, you never wanted him to kill anybody or necessarily to overthrow what was going on in Wakanda, but boy, it was hard to not sympathize with and at times even root for him. And we've seen him in heroic roles before, and much like Cavill and Affleck, he didn't really get the chance to work with great material. I'm speaking specifically of the Fantastic Four movie where he played the Human Torch. And that was a bad movie, plagued with all kinds of production problems that we're aware of, like director Josh Trank apparently hiding out in his trailer and refusing to come out for shoots for days at a time, and a script and budget that was not good. And yet, as I said, in Black Panther, he really showed not only his general acting chops and action chops, but the heart of a hero. I think he'd make an amazing Superman. Recasting would be spectacular, and with the recasting, let's make it official. The Justice League didn't happen. Wonder Woman did, and let's just take the little Men in Black stick and just wipe everything else from our memories. Comics are great at that. The Marvel comic universe reboots itself entirely every 6 or 7 months, and people go along with it. It's not a problem. I would think the same would apply to movies. We've seen 1 million people as Superman over the years. Granted, this would be a faster, more rapid turnover than we're used to, but one that everyone wants so badly that I think they'd really embrace a new, rebooted DC universe. And I think they wouldn't mind waiting the amount of time it would take to get it done properly. Find a new director, find a new producer, and recast as many people as you want. This is your sandbox. You're not on a timetable anymore. You already failed at beating Marvel at their game in this time. But your time is now. Marvel's entering a new phase. You can too. That's my message to DC, a comic company and film studio that I'm quite fond of and that I know is capable of great things. The Dark Knight is probably the best superhero movie ever made. Honestly, it's one of the best movies of the century, comic book or otherwise. It's one of those things that transcends genre, and if anything, is my favorite film noir of the last 20 years. So DC, you can do better, you should do better, and I can't wait to see what you do with this box of lemons and how you turn it into tasty, delicious box office lemonade. Thank you for checking out tonight's episode of the Matt Sager Podcast. Get in touch with me, ask me questions for my What's in the Box segment, or frankly, ask me anything. Email matt@mattsager.com. Call 646-535-4788 and leave me a voicemail. Maybe I'll even call you back. Have you on the show if you like. Hit me up on social media. Twitter's @Matt Sager, Facebook the Matt Sager. My voiceover page is Matt Sager VO, and this podcast page is Matt Sager Podcast. On Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager, and for more social media links, episodes of this podcast, blog posts, articles, my voiceover reels, contact info, and a whole lot more, go to mattsagervoiceover.com.